Welcome back to The Long Way Home. I'm your host, Josh Bearheart Hawk, and today I want to talk about something that's kind of been on my mind off and on for years, but lately it's been really eating away at me. This question of, are we too connected? And you might hear that and think, how could we possibly be too connected? What are you talking about? So if you grew up in the 80s and the 90s, like I did, you probably remember going outside and playing and, just kind of being disconnected from life in general. For us, we'd go outside, we'd run around, we'd go climb trees and play in the neighbors' yards and all, we get in all kinds of trouble. And the only time that we would ever hear anybody yelling for us or reaching out for us was when Mom was telling us it was time to come in, or she needed us for something, and she'd be out there screaming at the top of her lungs. And, my mom, you could hear her 10 miles away. So, we always heard Mom when she was yelling for us. And that was how you knew it was time to go home. That or the streetlights came on. The streetlights come on, it's starting to get dark. Yeah, it's probably time to go home. We probably need to go, we're going to miss dinner, So we were totally disconnected from the world around us. And if you wanted any kind of news, you either had to watch the news at, they had 4, 6, and 10. There's the main channels. You had them at noon, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, I want to say 10 and 11 o'clock at night. So you had specific times throughout the day until, Fox News was the first 24-hour network that came online. And that was when I was probably 10, 11, 12. I can't remember. I don't remember exactly what year it came on. But before that time, there wasn't a 24-hour news network, as it were. So you got your news from the television at the prescribed times, or if there was breaking news, it would break into whatever program you were watching, or you could read the newspaper. And this was back when newspapers were, most people had a newspaper subscription. If you didn't, you might have missed some things, but a lot of it was opinions, editorials, and they did tell you the news, but the news was so far behind by the time that you were reading it in the newspaper, especially if it was a big story. They were just kind of filling the details and maybe adding additional information, right? Nowadays, it's like we've fast forwarded a million times. News is almost breaking the instant that anything anywhere around the world happens. It doesn't matter how small or minute it is. I remember, you used to turn on, if you turned on one of the 24-hour networks early on and you saw breaking news, you knew there was something major going on. And now, every single time that I turn it on, there's breaking news. And it's usually stuff that I'm like, I either don't care about, or I read about that already. I already know about it because it was on some social media platform like 3 hours ago. It's very, very, it's very unlikely that you're going to get actual breaking news. And when you do, sometimes you get really big breaking news. Sometimes you get unprecedented breaking news, but it's so few and far between, and it loses most of its gusto because, if everything's breaking news, nothing's breaking news. And news isn't the only place that we're too connected, because work is the same way, where you used to, if you were important enough that your company might need to get a hold of you, they gave you a pager. Now, for those of you under the age of 35, maybe 30, pagers were these little devices that you would wear on your hip, and somebody could call, and they would leave a callback number. Sometimes, some of the fancier ones, you could leave a little short voice thing that would be transcribed or whatever. But usually you left a callback number, and it would be, you need to call this number right now. My mom had a pager, and when she was out and she needed, if we needed to get a hold of her, if I was babysitting, for instance, I would call her pager, and I would leave 911 as the response number if it was an emergency, or just the callback number if it was actual, I just need you to call me when you get the chance. And they were great for that kind of stuff, but most people didn't really have them. Cell phones weren't a thing. You could really easily disconnect. You go out hiking, you go outside, and if you're not home, you don't get the phone call. Everybody had landlines. But I would call my friend up wanting to go over to his house, and if he wasn't home, I'd get the answering machine, and I either have to leave a message or just try back again later. Usually he would try to let me know if he knew he was not going to be home. But then also, like if I went over to his house and my mom needed to get a hold of me, if we weren't at the house, well, she had no way of reaching me for any kind of situation. So it was one of those things where you actually could disconnect. You could walk away from things, and it could be considered to the detriment in some ways. For instance, nowadays, if my oldest daughter just got her driver's license, and I'd mentioned this in a in a prior podcast talking about children. She was about to turn 18. She has now turned 18 and gotten her driver's license. And if she's out and runs into some trouble, she has a cell phone. She can just call me. She can call the 911. She can call whoever she needs to call. She has, I can do quick claims for insurance on my phone. All of these things that make life a little bit more convenient and a little bit better, but at what cost? And I feel like it's the cost of us being just online all the time. Because having the phone is great, but now the phones have become this thing that like our entire lives revolve around. And it's hard nowadays. Companies like Netflix have admitted to creating content specifically for people to have on in the background, because they know that people are going to be reading, looking at their phones, or they're going to be doing something else while they just have that on as background noise. So they don't even put the effort into making quality, good content anymore. It's movies try to still, but even then, I think a lot of movies, you're expected to go to the movie theater and sit down and watch the movies when they come out. If they come out that way, you're expected to not have your phone on in the movie theater. Although I did see it. We recently went to the movies to see Beetlejuice 2. Beetlejuice, I guess. And there was somebody on their cell phone. It was on silent. It didn't make any noise, but I looked down the aisle and there's somebody sitting there with their phone screen on as they're watching the movie. And I'm like, what are you doing? It's with my wife and kids, I see it sometimes where they'll sit down, they'll be on their phones while they're doing something else. We'll sit down and watch a movie, and unless it's a specific date night, like we had our anniversary and we watched, we had a double feature of Twister and Twisters, and she put her phone down for that. But usually we'll turn on a movie and she's sitting there, she's scrolling on her phone, and she's like, oh, yeah, the movie's great. And I'm like, you aren't even seeing it. You're missing the best parts because you're not seeing the visual side, because movies are a very visual medium. I'll listen to podcasts or audiobooks and I'll play Minecraft in the background, or I'll clean, I'll be up doing something or driving. Those are what those are made for. They're very audio focused. If you're listening to this podcast, you're probably in the car. You're probably somewhere else. If you're watching on YouTube, you're probably on in the background. You are specifically listening to an audio first experience, whereas a movie or a television show is supposed to be video first with audio to accentuate the video. I watched John Oliver last week tonight with John Oliver, and I love it. I'm watching it for the visual gags because there's a lot of visual jokes in the humor. And I'm sitting there laughing, and my wife will be on her phone sitting next to me, and I'm like, you're missing the visual joke. And when she looks up, she laughs because she's like, oh, yeah, that is funny. Like, yeah, but you would have seen it the first time if you would have just not been on your phone and perpetually on your phone, And that happens. I think that's a lot of people nowadays. And it's not even, some people are doom scrolling. But I think a lot of people are less doom scrolling and more just scrolling out of boredom. They aren't really paying attention to what they're scrolling past. Whether that is a TikToks or YouTube Shorts or Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever platform you happen to be on, you're kind of just scrolling to scroll. You're scrolling because you're bored. And I think it goes a little bit back to, I talked on a previous podcast episode about imagination and how I think it feels like a lot of people, we've lost our imagination in a lot of ways. And I think that is kind of a part of why we've lost our imagination, because you don't have to think about things anymore. You don't have to imagine things anymore. You can just sit down and doom scroll. And there's a subreddit that I like to check out from time to time called r/shower thoughts. And the concept is that when you're in the shower, you get some of your best ideas. And I've found this to be true. I'll be in the shower and I'll get some really good ideas. But the shower is not the only place I'll get ideas. I'll get ideas just sitting down and staring out the window. I'll get ideas because I'm letting my mind wander. I'm letting my mind kind of do its own thing. I'm not just sitting there scrolling endlessly on my phone. I've tried to make a conscious effort to do less of that, to focus more on being in the moment. And, there's times that if I'm working on school, I'm focused directly on that. If I'm writing, I'm focused directly on that. If I'm making one of these podcasts or a YouTube video, I'm focused on that. But even the times that I'm not directly focused on one of those things, I try to keep myself, refrain from picking up my phone, refrain from trying to scroll through things endlessly, and focus on where I'm at in the moment, which lets me really come up with some really cool ideas for books and stuff like that. And that's why that's why I get so much writing done, and I have so much creativity coming out of me, because that's what I focus on. I don't focus on the scrolling and the trying to see what's going on online today. And I think that if more people did that, made that conscious effort, I think a lot of things would start to shift in a positive way for society as a whole. Now, we have to recognize that on the one hand, while it would be nice to completely disconnect, that's almost impossible nowadays. You go to a restaurant. If I go fast food, every single fast food restaurant has an app now. I'll go to McDonald's and they've got an app. And sure, you can still order just talking to the person for now, but they really push the app. Go in the app, order through the app. Even Subway and Taco Bell and Wendy's, they've all got their separate apps. You almost have to sign up for these things. And it's so that they can track your shopping habits and all that kind of stuff. And that's going to be, I've got a financial episode plan that I want to talk about, because I've learned some stuff through my schooling. I've learned some stuff that I want to talk about. But it seems like no matter what you do, you're almost required now to have a phone and to be online. The online banking is pushed very heavily. Online transactions and shopping. Walmart has, and to the, I want to be careful how I say this, but if you go into the store, because they push their app too, they want you to order online, pick up. But if you go into the store, you're going to buy things cheaper. If you order things online through their app and then go pick them up, you're actually paying more. We did this as an experiment. Put a whole bunch of stuff in the cart online and got one total. I think it was like $140. Decided, you know what? I don't want to wait 4 hours to go pick this stuff up, so let's just go to the store. Went and got the exact same items, and the total was $120. And that was without counting any extra fees and that was just the base cost of the groceries. So that's part of it too, is that companies are using these apps to kind of price gouge a little bit and make a little bit of their money back. But again, it goes back to we're connected in so many ways now. It's impossible. If I didn't have a cell phone, it would be almost impossible to apply for jobs, for instance. A lot of places now require you to go to their website, to go to their app, just to apply for a job. You have to have some kind of online presence. If a company searches you up in a lot of situations and you don't have an online presence, that's almost seen as a negative. That's almost seen as worse than having a bad online presence where you've said controversial things. Because no online presence, what are you trying to hide? And that's the immediate thought that people go to is, well, this person must have something to hide because they don't have any presence at all. So what's the solution? Where do we go? How do we fix this hole we've dug ourselves into? And I think to an extent there's some things that we can do as individuals. We can individually choose to not browse Facebook constantly. To not browse Twitter, to stay off of YouTube, get rid of a lot of the mobile apps that you find yourself using. And disconnect, choose to step back from those things. If you're going to use them, which there's not necessarily anything inherently wrong with using social media, but use them thoughtfully. Use them in the way that makes sense. If you want to check on, maybe you have a relative that was about to have a baby, and you would just want to keep up with the progress online, and they're posting Facebook updates or something. You can check that sort of stuff. But if you find yourself just scrolling and just seeing a bunch of random updates, well, maybe that's the stuff that you need to stop. You need to say, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to go find something productive to do. Pick up a hobby. Start making YouTube videos. Do something for fun. Become creative. Start writing. Find some art. Find something you can do in the community. Just anything to get off of being perpetually online. Other than that, unfortunately, unless there's some massive changes as a society moving forward, we're going to continue to see the growth in online use. We're going to continue to see more and more stuff being pushed online because it's a lot cheaper and easier for companies to do things online than it is to do things in person typically. Opening a storefront is incredibly expensive, but setting up a website, now that's not too bad. So, we're going to continue, and it's good to use it as a tool. There are good, like I mentioned earlier with my daughter, with being out driving. If something happens, she can get a hold of me. When I was in high school, when I first got my driver's license, I couldn't do that. I didn't have a cell phone. And, for instance, before I got my driver's license, I was playing football in high school, and we would get done with practice, and I would have to call my mom to say, hey, we're done with practice, and then I'd have to wait for her to come and get me. My kids, if they still have, they might still have to call and tell me, but they can let me know ahead of time. We can plan things out a little bit better. Or if they are having trouble, driving home from school, hey, I've got a problem. It's a phone call, real quick phone call. You don't have to search for a payphone. You don't have to do anything special like that. So there are good, positive things that can come out of this, the use of technology and the internet and expanding. But we have to be thoughtful about it. We have to focus on how can we use this to better our lives and avoid some of the detriments and some of the things that are kind of holding us back. So that's really all I've got for this episode. I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because it's been something that's bothered me. I feel like at times I can be online way too much at times. And I've been trying to make a conscious effort to be online less often, to not pay as much attention to what's going on online. And I think my mental health has been better for it. So something to keep in mind and something that you should, I want to hear your comments though. You can comment down below if you're on YouTube, if you're on other platforms. This podcast goes out everywhere. So you might not have the option necessarily to comment, but you can send me a message now. Most podcasting platforms should have a link within the podcast that says, send us a message. And if you click on that, it'll let you send a message directly to me that I will see on my podcast platform. So, that's an awesome little feature that you can do now. So that's the way you can give me feedback. You can let me know your thoughts. And, of course, rate, review, like if you're on YouTube, all that good stuff. All of that helps. Share if you found this insightful, if you thought it was interesting, share the podcast. I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to really focus on building this presence up. I'm enjoying doing this podcast. I'm enjoying everything about it. It's the one thing that I'm really trying to focus in on and get these episodes out on a consistent basis. And I'm having a lot of fun with it and sharing my stories and hearing stories from other people that went through similar things, maybe grew up after the 90s or before the 90s. It's always different to hear different people's perspectives. But that's all I got for this one. I do want to thank you all for watching. Everybody have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.